Three things I'm watching as LSU hosts UCLA and your final score prediction. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe to your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified when we post a new video. Let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day. LSU, UCLA, the Tigers hopefully have buried the memories of that South Carolina game, the close call, and they're ready for a dominant performance, something that would be very well received by the LSU faithful who've had three very stressful Saturdays. Of course, the opener against Southern Cal, where it came down to Southern Cal scoring with 8 seconds to go to win the game. The Nichols game, which should have been an exhale spot for LSU on a short week, just 6 days after that hard-fought game, not getting back to Baton Rouge until 5 a.m. on Monday. Quick turnaround against a motivated team, and you were in a dogfight until the second play of the second half when Nichols scored to pull within a score. And LSU, of course, then would extend their lead and really run away from Nichols in the second half, but it shouldn't have taken that long. And then we all know what transpired last week in Columbia, South Carolina, your SEC opener, when LSU was a touchdown favorite and needed all kinds of fortune and South Carolina misfortune. That was just a bad football team that you played, made a ton of mistakes and allowed LSU to dig themselves out of a 17-0 hole. This is a very different challenge altogether. And we've talked about it all week. As a matter of fact, if you go to LouisianaSports.net, a website of which I'm a publisher, my colleague Hunt Palmer did a piece where he gathered together the opinions on this game of a lot of different UCLA writers. And the headline, which is pretty clever, was Trouble Bruin, B-R-U-I-N, a little a homophone there. And Hunt basically just collected the opinions of a variety of different UCLA writers and media members. And it effectively feels like they're lampooning their team. Quote, I don't think they could be any worse at the moment. After a drubbing at the hands of Indiana to open Big Ten play, that's about as embarrassing as it gets for UCLA fans in football land. How about this one? Brian Finley, who was a guest on After Further Review, who you heard plenty of. I would say, honestly, the energy is pretty low right now. Look, I could go on. You could go read it for yourself at LouisianaSports.net. The bottom line is there's not a lot of good to say. This should be a game where LSU opened this week as a 24.5-point favorite. Should cruise to an easy win. Although a lot of money on Friday did come in on the Bruins as we saw that line drop from 24.5 down to 22. So maybe the Sharps aren't quite sold on LSU, and I can't say that I blame them through 3 games just yet. But there's 3 things that I'm watching. I'll run through them in order for you. 3 things I'm watching, and I'll give you a score prediction. Number 1 is you've got to get young guys experience. And I'm going to run through a handful of players in particular that I'm looking to see in this ballgame. But keep in mind, LSU and Brian Kelly have effectively made the decision as a program that they are going to lean on their young players with a higher ceiling, which means you're going to take some lumps and there's going to be growing pains. But the only way to get those young, talented players better is experience. You got to get there. Go back 2 years. Will Campbell, Emory Jones. You knew starting 2 true freshmen on the offensive line at tackle in the SEC was not ideal. But you also knew those 2 guys were your most talented players, and you had to get them experience. So you were willing to go through the growing pains as freshmen to get them to be more veteran. By the end of that year, boy, they were good. Last year, they were awesome. And this year, they're projected first-round picks. I think the same is true now. You can look around LSU, in particular on the defensive side of the ball, and see a lot of young guys that are starting to see their reps increase. Deshaun Spears at safety. Deshaun Spears, I think they look at and say, he is he is the best guy they have right back there with the highest ceiling. I have given the comparison several times to Eric Reed. When Eric Reed was a freshman at LSU, by the time in 2010 we got to November, Eric Reed had become a starter. He would be an All-American the next year, and the following season he would be a first-round draft pick. When you look at Deshaun Spears, he's got 109 snaps on the season, just 74 on defense. As a matter of fact, he played just 8 total snaps in week 1. Only 2 of them on defense. In week 2 against Nichols, he ended up playing 38 snaps. You saw 28 of those on the defensive side of the ball. Last week at South Carolina, Spears made his first start. It was 27 snaps at free safety, 8 at slot corner, 9 in the box. So you saw more than half of those 63 snaps come on the defensive side of the ball. The point is they are ramping up Deshaun Spears because they feel like he's the best guy they got talent-wise, and they got to get him more experienced. Ahmad Bro is another player that we could talk about. Ahmad Bro got the start last week against South Carolina. They have to get him better if they feel like technically he's one of their best. Ahmad Bro has played just 61 snaps on the season. They feel like 61 defensive snaps, because in special teams included, he's at 70. But 61 snaps on the defensive line, 14 week 1, 16 week 2, 31 snaps on the defensive line at South Carolina. They effectively have decided, hey, you're one of our best guys, especially after the injury to Jacoby and Guillory. You got to get him more reps. PJ Woodland, not sure if you noticed, PJ Woodland did not play a single defensive snap against South Carolina. He's played 49 snaps on the season. At wide corner, 8 against Southern Cal, 17 against Nichols. Didn't play defense against South Carolina. This could be an opportunity to get PJ Woodland back out onto the field. Gabe Relaford is another player that we're keeping an eye on. He's a freshman defensive end who we saw actually play some fullback as well for LSU against South Carolina. But Relaford is a guy that they're very high on as not only a defensive end, but in a variety of roles. Took 1 snap against Southern Cal. It was on kick coverage. Took 28 snaps against Nichols, 23 of them on the defensive line. Last week against South Carolina, we saw his snaps go down to 17. 11 on the defensive line, 2 in the box, 3 offensively in the backfield. The point is, this is an opportunity to continue to get those young guys more snaps, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. I'd also point out Caden Durham, who, as high as we are on Durham after the game at South Carolina, he has 16 rushing attempts. You've got to get these guys experience. Juwan Johnson electrified us against Nichols with his 3 receptions on 3 targets. He got in the end zone. He has yet to take a snap, yet to take a handoff. He doesn't have a carry yet. Last week against South Carolina, he was in the game at one point, went the wrong direction, caused the play to bust. This is an opportunity where you see the young talent. If you're going to build through your young talent, you've got to get him experience. A game like this where you're a heavy favorite at home against a bad team flying across the country that's going to be tired, going to be hot with a 100-degree heat index at 2:30 in the afternoon, with the sitting on the east sideline with the sun cooking them the entire afternoon. This is going to be an opportunity for LSU to get a lot of those young guys experience. That is number 1 for me, first and foremost. Get all those young guys experience. Number 2 is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and it's Chris Hilton. Brian Kelly said on Thursday, Chris Hilton is probable. We are expecting he is going to make his season debut. We've talked about this enough. I don't need to go too deep dive into it. But Chris Hilton is your deep threat. Chris Hilton is your stretch the field game breaker. Now, on the season, we have seen some guys be able to make some nice plays downfield. Aaron Anderson had a 46-yard reception against South Carolina this past weekend. It wasn't just Aaron Anderson this past weekend, because you had some other big plays in the passing game. You had a 29-yarder from Kyron Lacey, a 20-yarder from Mason Taylor, a 20-yarder from CJ Daniels. So they have been able to get downfield. But the game breaker, the blow the top off the defense, what Brian Thomas brought a year ago, is what Chris Hilton brings to this offense, and it's what you lack right now. I'm not telling you Chris Hilton against UCLA in his first action back is going to go play 60 snaps and have 10 targets. I don't think that's the case. I think they're going to ease him in these next 2 weeks. But just watching Chris Hilton be able to get on a go route and run a corner and a safety off the field to free up more space is going to make this offense more dynamic, even more dynamic than it is right now. Be very excited to see Chris Hilton return. There's one more thing that I'll be watching. I'll tell you what that is and give you my score prediction as we continue Locked on LSU, your team every day. Locked on LSU, today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold, Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Show today is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, and we've had the great pleasure to talk about FanDuel for a long time now. In NFL seasons, you can start the season off with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. So, got a feeling on LSU UCLA? That line came down a little bit. If you think the Tigers roll, great opportunity to discover FanDuel. Again, get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Okay, so I told you there's 3 things that I'm watching for this game. Number 1, the young experience. Number 2, Chris Hilton's return. Number 3 is LSU's run defense. This is the antithesis of what we saw a week ago. A week ago, when LSU was playing South Carolina, we talked about the LSU offensive line against the South Carolina defensive front, and we talked all week and said that's a good-on-good matchup. South Carolina is very active, very talented, very veteran defensive front against LSU's elite offensive line with 2 bookend tackles that are projected first-round draft picks. That was good on good. South Carolina won some, LSU won a bunch as well, and ultimately LSU ended up winning the game. This week, when you flip that around, the UCLA running game against the LSU run defense, that is bad on bad. There is no other way to say it. LSU's run defense has been one of the worst in the country so far up until this point in the season. And they have just got to find a way to improve. When you look at this run defense, LSU's rush defense is allowing 154 yards per game. That is 89th in the country. 89th. UCLA's rush offense, 83.5 yards a game. That's 122nd. UCLA can't run the ball. LSU can't stop the run. This is bad on bad, and something has got to give. Either LSU's rush defense is going to prove its mettle, or UCLA's rush offense is going to find some room to run. I will submit this to you because I think this really is the story within the story for LSU's run defense. What if I told you through 3 games, LSU has allowed 462 rush yards? That's the average of 154. But of those 462, 208. 45%, nearly half of those yards have come on 3 carries. Colin Guggenheim, 67-yard touchdown. Lenore Sellers, 75-yard touchdown. Rocket Sanders, 66-yard touchdown. 45% of the yardage you've allowed in 3 games are on those 3 runs. Nearly half of the rushing yardage you have allowed has come on 3 runs. What that tells you is pretty consistently, LSU's rush defense has been good. Not great, not dominant, but they've been more than serviceable. What they cannot seem to do is figure out how to stop the big play in the run game. That's your challenge. That's your challenge on Saturday, defensively. Don't give up a 60-yard run. This LSU defense has done an impeccable job of not giving up the busted coverage in the secondary, which was so familiar a year ago. Yes, they've given up long plays in the past game, but generally, it's a great receiver making a play. It's not a coverage bust where a receiver's running free and there's no defensive back in the picture. It's odd because you've eliminated the busts and the big plays in the passing game, but it's been transferred now to that defensive front. And even the inability to tackle in the secondary, as we saw with Sage Ryan whiffing on Lenore Sellers on that 75-yarder. So that's your task this week. Don't give up the long, gashing run. Limit that UCLA rushing offense, and you're going to be just fine. Because Garbers, their quarterback, has been atrocious. He's completing only about 50% of his passes, which in the modern age of college football is inexcusable. LSU's defense should have a great day. Remember, UCLA beat Hawaii 16-13. They never led in that game until their field goal at the end of the ball game to win at 16-13. And of course, they got blown out on their home field by Indiana and scoring only 13 points. This should be a day dominated by LSU. I'll give you a score prediction. I gave the score at LouisianaSports.net. I gave it on my radio show, so I'll stick with it. I have LSU 38-13. It's hard for me to imagine UCLA getting going offensively. They're just not that kind of team. So forgive me, I had 38-17. I'm sorry, 38-17. 38-17. It's hard to imagine UCLA getting going offensively, coming on the road, Death Valley. It's going to be a good crowd, even though it's the middle of the day. It's going to be hot. But that heat index is going to work against UCLA because they're not going to be used to playing in this. I mean, it's 70 degrees in LA. They're not going to be used to playing in 100 degrees and humidity and all this. I think that wears on them. And LSU should be able to lean on UCLA and win this game comfortably. My only real question is if LSU's offense can actually bust through. Remember, we played for Elise Sterling's prediction for this game, and he had LSU winning this game 54-13. So he had LSU's offense putting up even more than I'm projecting here, 3 touchdowns more than I'm projecting. So, or 2 touchdowns more than I'm projecting. But we'll see if the Tigers can really get going offensively and break through. But I like LSU, and I like them comfortably in this game again this week and next week against South Alabama. It's not about your opponent. It's about LSU getting healthy, getting more experience, getting better as a team to go into our open date with 2 weeks to prepare for Ole Miss to take your swing at a top 10 team. We'll be here for all of it. Okay, that'll do it for us. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every single day. Hey, if you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. Drop your comments as well, and be sure to tell a friend that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.